Hi and welcome back to Tax Chats with Danielle Sherwin with our Sector Insights edition for Season 2. I'm joined by Kian today from our professional and business services sector, focusing on our sector-led approach at RSM and how we work collaboratively and all the different things that are kind of the tips and tricks and what risks you're seeing in your sector. And we work together on a number of clients, so where the international tax risks and opportunities arise in your sector group. So do you want to start by just telling us a little bit more about the professional and business services sector?
Yeah, sure. Look, first off, thank you. Thanks for asking me to join these sessions. It's always great to have an open discussion about it. Look, RSM's approach to sectors is unique in a way that what the market is telling us, the advisory landscape is changing. And it's been changing for some time, where our clients are no longer after that advisor who's just sitting there and doing the day-to-day processing. They want real customized information, customized advisory, and going back to that core advisory role. Having a sector-based or industry-tailored approach helps RSM as a firm go to market and provide our clients with everything they need. And what we are seeing is the collaboration that we have amongst different divisions, so business advisory, international tax, audit, corporate tax, is that the real benefactor of all of that is our clients. That at the end of the day, they're getting an industry-specific knowledge that knows the uniqueness of their industries and the quirks that come about it. So I'm really excited to be leading the professional business services sector. At the end of the day, it's also what we do as an accounting firm. So the proof is in the pudding on how we go about it, and I'm excited to be the lead in that area and keep spreading the message on the kind of work that we do.
So in terms of who's involved in that kind of sector, obviously accounting firms is probably a key one that most people will think of. Law firms is probably another one that jumps out, but what else is involved in the sector space?
If you were to go past the IBIS World reports and industries, there's a variety of them in there, but the easiest way that I like to explain it is, if you're in the business of selling time, you're a professional, that to me falls within the remit of professional business services. Where we see an abundance of our work and kind of where we want to see the growth is obviously, yes, accounting firms, law firms are the ones that come top of mind. And then beyond that as well, you've got engineering firms and architectures as well. But there's a broader range of services or businesses that fall within that to the extent that they sell their time.
Yep. And I guess we've got a number of clients where we kind of do crossover work. So in the international tax and transfer pricing space, a lot of the activity I've been seeing, particularly with like maybe small business accountants, lawyers, is probably a lot around M&A activity, acquisitions. It's probably changed a little bit since COVID times, I think, and we're starting to see a bit more of an uptake, I think, in M&A activity. We'll see how the economy moves in the next few years, but at the moment, I think that's quite common. Did you want to share any insights from a sector-specific perspective around what you're seeing in the marketplace at the moment as key issues for?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, let's take it back as a step and talk about the sector as a whole, where we see it. For us, we do see the next 5 years being a period of steadiness and some steady growth in there. It's going to be led by your more traditional businesses. So law firms, there's always going to be activities for them. And if it's geared and structured correctly and encouraging growth and succession, they'll continue to do well. We also think there's going to be, the whole industry as a whole will be buoyed by engineering firms. We do expect there's going to be a fair bit of public spending in civil works, infrastructure, which will drive that engineering aspect of it. And then outside of that, what kind of issues do we see? As you rightly pointed out, during the COVID era and the couple of years preceding that, the M&A market, for example, and the IPO market was quite dormant. We are starting to see that come back to life a little bit. Where that provides, opportunities, for example, for law firms is, assisting with their clients in terms of deals and structures and how they go about it. In terms of actually those specific businesses within those sectors, a lot of the issues that we're currently obviously seeing is around compliance. So, there's a very heavy focus by the commissioner, particularly around part issues and how they distribute and tax their profits. And there is guidelines and rulings around how partnership profits are distributed, where they end up, and ultimately how the tax on that is assessed. And surprisingly, there's a lot of organizations that aren't aware about that or apply in the right manner. We do see that as an emerging issue. Following off from that, these are some of these businesses are really old businesses and they've been around. And what we're seeing is that the model or the structure that they may have had it worked for them back then. Maybe not so much now. A typical scenario is, we'll stick with the theme of law firms or even perhaps engineers, is you've got great talent. You want to bring them up. You want to make them a partner. But current models are sometimes inhibitive of that. There's either an expensive buy-in or a transition that needs to occur. And usually the individual who's looking to step into that role probably also, if they're living anywhere in Sydney or one of our major capital cities, has a heavy mortgage sitting on the side, and to borrow money to do that as well is going to be cumbersome and probably not likely. So we are seeing a refresh and a fair bit of focus within the industry around what structures are actually operating out of. And is it supportive of succession? Is it supportive of growth? Is it supportive of having the right remuneration model to ensure that they keep the talent they've got for the longevity and the growth of the business?
That's a really great insight. I think it's been such an interesting space, and watching this develop over the last few years, you can see some of the common themes continue to emerge. I think the interesting one that you just mentioned was the financing element. And that's not something I generally associate with professional and business services, but obviously it's a real common theme emerging in the market.
Yeah, and there's an old adage that a builder's house is never finished, and it's similar for law firms and accounting firms where they're great at servicing their clients.
Yeah.
Sometimes you also need to reflect back and look at your own business and see, okay, what do I need to do over here to make sure that I've got the business of running this practice set up right and for the continuation. And that is a real life issue, particularly now. We're in a period of inflationary pressure, the cost of living. Whilst if you span it over a 50-year period, is it massive? Probably not.
Yeah.
But for the current workforce, it is a big issue, and they've never dealt with that. So organizations need to shift to that and make sure that their business is suitable to allow for succession.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're seeing with advisors too, you mentioned it earlier, is that advisors are having to address a whole wide range of issues that maybe was not their traditional area of expertise. So I see a lot of referral and work collaboratively with other accountants or other law firms where they kind of have identified that they have that client need, but just don't know who to talk to get it. So I think for me, that's where I see a lot of the collaborative work with the small business accountants or law firms and things like that. And I think we're starting to see a lot more cross-border. Just every client is better generally using a global market rather than an Australian market. So you are seeing a lot more expansion of international tax issues across the board for all clients. And I think lawyers and accountants need help sometimes to figure out who to talk to manage those, because realistically, they're there for their clients, they're there to help manage their risks, they help identify opportunities if that's what it might be. And it's really interesting seeing how some of these issues play out on a long-term basis too. Yeah,
look, the key word there is collaboration, right? You've hit the nail on the head. And I mentioned at the beginning is going to that sort of tailored sector approach.
Yeah.
The market and our clients don't want to have to go to 7 different people. And it's a much better outcome for everybody, particularly a client, where there is a collaboration amongst professionals within the same organization, but also professionals amongst different organizations that complement each other. And they're able to get the best outcome, but also de-risk in terms of, what they're actually advising their client of. And, the international tax regime that is going on, we're seeing that more and more now that, every year there's new regulations, new guidelines coming in to make sure that businesses are paying their fair share of tax in the jurisdictions in which they're deriving it. And more governments also are understanding that there's probably businesses that are operating in their tax jurisdiction without paying any tax. So there is going to be a focus on that. And I don't believe it's going to slow down. I think as we've been in a globalized world for some time, and this is just going to keep getting further and further. And it's not surprising. I mean, if you look at the data and the digitalization of everything, information is readily available now. So that's just going to be a factor that every organization needs to be able to deal with going forward. Yeah, I think the ATO has so much information at their disposal and just continue to get more and more and more every single year. So it's really for clients understanding what information you're required to give and how your systems are going to be set up to capture the data. Are there new provisions that you're going to have to factor in?
is this going to be a global reporting? Is it just an Australian reporting, and where it all interacts?
And it kind of also leads into emerging areas as well. So, for example, where we see it is, things like ESG. That is a very new area for Australia. There's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 reporting, and you don't know where you sit down alone. If you're part of a global organization, you may think you're a tier 3, but you might as well be a tier 2 or a tier 1 without knowing, and collection of that data. So a real big important area of this is the education piece of the client as well, and sometimes some of their advisors, because you don't know what you don't know. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just making sure you've got the right group of advisors around you working together to be able to help you through that.
Yeah, and I think I always see that a lot from an international tax perspective as well, because Australia has one set of rules that's, centered on the similar principles, but another country can have the similar rules but different legislation, and it's just applied slightly differently. So sometimes, head office might have a slightly different take on how it's applied in Australia versus what a local advisor might say. So I can definitely see that happening regularly in the space.
And you and I know this, we've got mutual clients, and the common day-to-day problems. There is related party loans and no appropriate loan agreement with overseas, and that impacts the withholding that needs to happen, transfer pricing issues, and so it's a much broader issue. And I'm comfortable enough to put my hand up and say I don't know about this sort of stuff as well. I know enough that I need to call Danny when he gets called into an issue, and it's just really as simple as that. And that's just not in an accounting environment, but that's really with any business. Particularly, if you look at law firms, they also advise a lot of these businesses as well. So it's good to have that knowledge and that tool up your sleeves.
Yeah. And even when you're dealing with law firms or even engineering firms, everyone's slightly different. Some have great capabilities in one area, but not in another, and vice versa. So it's really just learning to play to each other's strengths is kind of how I like to say it. Like, if you're uncomfortable with something, you can probably find someone who knows more about it.
And to be honest, I'm thankful for that, because it'll keep our job interesting. Otherwise, you're doing the same thing day in, day out. So that's interesting work. So that's good work.
Thanks, Kian. I think that's been really insightful, and I think it's really interesting to hear, particularly for clients or people in the professional or business services sector, some of the key themes and trends, and what you're really seeing in the marketplace. I always enjoy working with you, collaboratively with your clients, and I think that's what I really enjoy doing about this tax chat series, is learning with other people, working together. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you. I always enjoy having a coffee and geeking out over some tax stuff. So anytime.
It's nice to talk tax with someone. Thanks, guys. See you next time.